Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. Sometimes the most unexpected stories aren't about strangers or passing encounters, but about the people closest to us, the ones we thought we knew, the ones we believed had their own roles in our lives set in stone. But what happens when those roles blur, when the lines of loyalty, love, and desire get tangled in ways we never imagined? That's where this story begins. I grew up in what most people would consider a stable home. My mother was the rock of our family, responsible, caring, always putting everyone else first. Then there was my stepdad. He came into our lives when I was already old enough to notice the difference between my real father and this new man who suddenly became part of our daily world. At first, he was just Mom's husband, someone I respected from a distance. But over time, things changed. He wasn't just another figure in the house. He was attentive, understanding in ways my mother sometimes wasn't, and somehow, he made me feel seen. It didn't happen overnight. It was little moments. A smile that lasted a second too long. A conversation that went a little deeper than it should have. A touch that lingered when it probably shouldn't. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I was just craving attention. But slowly, I began to realize that he noticed me too, and that's when everything grew complicated. I knew it was wrong. I knew the weight of what it would mean if anything ever crossed the line. But emotions aren't always rational. Late at night, when the house was quiet, I found myself thinking about him more than I should. And one night, while my mother slept just a few rooms away, that unspoken tension became something real. That night changed everything. It was a moment of crossing a line that I could never uncross, a decision that carried both excitement and guilt. The silence of the house made every sound louder, every breath heavier, every heartbeat impossible to ignore. It felt dangerous, reckless, but also impossible to resist. Now, looking back, I can't help but ask myself, was it desire, loneliness, or something else that pushed us over the edge? Was I searching for comfort in the wrong place, or was it a connection that had been building all along? These are questions I still wrestle with, and maybe you will too as you hear the rest of the story. I'll be sharing everything, the way it began, how it unfolded, and the consequences that followed. But for now, I'll leave you here in that moment of quiet tension, where a choice was made and nothing would ever be the same again. After that night, it was impossible to go back to the way things used to be. Every glance across the dinner table felt different. Every word carried a hidden meaning. My mother carried on with her routines as if nothing had changed, while inside me, everything was in turmoil. I tried to act normal, but deep down I knew he and I had crossed into a place we could never fully return from. He wasn't just my stepdad anymore. He became the one person I couldn't stop thinking about. Whenever he entered a room, I felt my pulse quicken, even if no one else noticed. His voice suddenly sounded warmer, his smile softer, and the way his eyes met mine held something unspoken, something only the two of us could understand. It was like carrying a secret that burned in silence. But with that secret came fear. Fear of being caught, fear of breaking my mother's heart, and fear of what this all meant for me. Was it just infatuation? Was it loneliness? Or was it something deeper, something I had never felt with anyone else? These questions kept circling in my head, and the more I tried to push them away, the stronger they became. The strange thing was, he didn't treat me differently in front of my mother. He was careful, maybe too careful. He'd laugh at her jokes, help her with groceries, and carry on like the perfect husband. But when she wasn't looking, there was a different side of him, subtle gestures, a light touch on my arm, or a look that lingered for just a beat too long. It was those small things that left me restless at night, wondering if what I felt was really happening or if it was all in my imagination. The truth is, I wasn't used to being noticed like that. I was 20, old enough to know better, but still young enough to be caught in the rush of emotions I couldn't fully control. I had boyfriends before, but none of them made me feel the way he did. There was a calmness in his presence, a sense of safety, but mixed with it was a forbidden thrill that made my heart race. It was a contradiction I couldn't untangle. Sometimes, I would catch myself studying him quietly, noticing the way he moved, the way he carried himself. He wasn't overly affectionate, not the type to shower attention, but the little he gave felt intense, almost overwhelming. And maybe that was why it was so hard to resist, because every moment felt rare, like something not meant to be touched, but impossible to ignore. I tried to distract myself. I'd spend more time with friends, throw myself into hobbies, even avoid staying home too much. But no matter where I went, my thoughts always circled back to him. And every time I returned home, the tension would settle over the house again, invisible but impossible to miss. There were nights when I would lie awake, just listening to the faint sounds of the house, wondering if he was awake too. Did he think of me the way I thought of him? Did he feel the same pull, or was it all in my head? The not knowing was its own kind of torture, but also the very thing that kept the fire alive. I knew the line we crossed couldn't be undone, but what haunted me more was the possibility that it might happen again. And if it did, would I be strong enough to stop it, or would I let myself fall even deeper? The answers weren't clear then, and maybe they never would be. All I knew was that our story was only beginning to unfold, and the weight of what came next hung in the air like a secret waiting to be discovered. The days that followed felt like walking on a tightrope. Every step I took around the house was careful, calculated, as if one wrong move could send everything crashing down. My mother remained blissfully unaware, busy with work, errands, and keeping the house running smoothly. But in the spaces between her presence, there was always that tension, me and him, locked in a silence that said far more than words ever could. The conflict inside me only grew stronger. Part of me wanted to confess everything, to release the secret burning inside. But another part wanted to hold on to it, to protect the fragile connection we had formed. Was it love, or was it just the thrill of something forbidden? Every time I asked myself, I found no clear answer. And yet, I couldn't deny the pull. It was real, and it was changing me in ways I hadn't expected. One evening, my mother went to bed early after a long day. I stayed in the living room, pretending to scroll through my phone, though my mind was elsewhere. He walked in quietly, carrying a cup of coffee, and sat on the opposite couch. We didn't say anything at first, but the silence was heavy, filled with everything we weren't allowed to speak out loud. I could feel his eyes on me, and when I finally looked up, the look we shared said all the things we couldn't. But just then, the sound of my mother's footsteps upstairs broke the moment. He looked away quickly, sipping his coffee like nothing had happened. My heart raced as if we had almost been caught, even though nothing actually happened. Still, it left me shaken. I realized then how dangerous this was, not just for me, but for everyone involved. One slip, one wrong move, and the truth would shatter everything. To make things more complicated, there was someone else, an old friend who had been showing interest in me again. He was my age, easy to be around, and he offered a distraction from the storm building at home. When we spent time together, I felt a sense of normalcy, like maybe I could let go of this secret connection and choose something safe instead. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. No matter how much I tried, my thoughts always drifted back to my stepdad, to the intensity of those silent moments that no one else could ever understand. This tug-of-war between two worlds became its own kind of conflict. On one side was safety, a future without secrets, the chance to have a relationship that didn't carry so much weight. On the other side was desire, the kind of bond that felt unshakable even though it was risky and wrong. And in the middle was me, caught in the pull of both, unable to fully let go of either. The pressure grew worse when small things started piling up, my mother noticing I seemed distracted, my friend asking why I was distant, and my stepdad becoming more careful than ever. It felt like everyone around me sensed that something was off, even if they couldn't put it into words. The secret we carried was beginning to feel heavier with each passing day. It was no longer just a quiet tension, it had become a shadow following me everywhere I went. At family dinners, I would feel his eyes on me even when he tried to hide it. When my mother laughed at something he said, I couldn't help but wonder if she ever noticed how different his smile was when it was directed at me. The walls of our home, once ordinary and safe, now felt like they were closing in, holding a secret too dangerous to stay hidden forever. One night, the tension reached a breaking point. My mother had been working late, leaving the house unusually quiet. I tried to keep myself busy, but every sound seemed amplified, every silence filled with unspoken words. When he walked into the kitchen and stood just a few feet away, the air between us felt charged. Neither of us moved at first, but it was clear we were both thinking the same thing. How much longer could we keep this act going before something gave way? He broke the silence with a casual comment about dinner, but his voice carried a weight that didn't match his words. I answered quickly, trying to sound normal, but my hands shook slightly as I set down the glass I was holding. For a moment, our eyes locked, and I felt the pull stronger than ever, almost impossible to resist. The quiet of the house made every second feel longer, every heartbeat louder. Then, as if fate were testing us, my mother's car pulled into the driveway earlier than expected. Panic rushed through me, and I quickly stepped back, putting distance between us. He turned away, pretending to busy himself with something on the counter. By the time she walked in, everything looked normal on the surface, but inside me, it felt like the world had tilted. The close calls were becoming too frequent. My friend noticed I was distracted, asking if something was wrong. My mother started to watch me more closely, as though she sensed I was hiding something. And he became more cautious, but that only made the moments when we were alone together even more intense. Every conversation was a test, every glance a dangerous game. I knew we were walking towards something inevitable, but I didn't know what form it would take. Would it be a confession, an exposure, or something else entirely? The suspense gnawed at me day and night, the fear of being discovered battling with the desire I couldn't shake. The climax was building, piece by piece, in ways none of us could stop. And as the tension reached its highest point, I couldn't help but wonder, when the truth finally came out, who would be the one left standing in the wreckage. Just when I thought the weight of our secret couldn't grow heavier, something happened that shifted everything. The first close calls were already bad enough, but what unfolded next made the risk feel even sharper, almost impossible to escape. One evening, my mother casually mentioned she had to leave town for a few days for a work trip. At first, I didn't think much of it. She had gone on business before. But then it hit me. That meant the house would be just me and him. No buffer, no excuse, no wall of protection between us and the truth we were hiding. The thought of being alone with him terrified me and thrilled me at the same time. For days leading up to her trip, I couldn't focus. Every detail of our daily life felt magnified, as if my mother could sense the storm that was about to unfold. I wondered if he thought about it too, if he lay awake at night realizing what it meant to have all that time alone. When she finally left, the house felt different. Too quiet, too heavy. I tried to keep busy, filling my time with chores and phone calls to friends, but even those distractions couldn't erase the reality. It was just us now. The tension between us had space to breathe, and it grew stronger with every hour. The plot twist came when, unexpectedly, my old friend, the one who had been showing interest in me again, showed up at the house. He said he was just checking in, but the timing couldn't have been worse. He stayed longer than I expected, chatting casually, asking if I wanted to hang out later. The whole time, I felt my stepdad's presence in the background, quiet but undeniable, as if he was watching the entire exchange unfold. When my friend finally left, the atmosphere in the house shifted. He didn't say anything right away, but I could feel his energy tight, unsettled, almost jealous. That was when I realized the connection between us had grown deeper than I thought. It wasn't just me feeling the pull anymore. He felt it too, and the arrival of my friend had stirred something inside him that he could no longer hide. That night, the silence between us was unbearable. Every sound of the house settling, every step I took upstairs, felt like a reminder of how close we were to something explosive. I couldn't stop replaying the look in his eyes after my friend left, part anger, part longing, and part something I couldn't name. It scared me because it meant he wasn't just playing along anymore. He was invested. The stakes had never been higher. Not only were we risking being caught by my mother, but now there was someone else unknowingly tangled in our web. If my friend grew suspicious, or if my mother ever found out, everything could collapse in an instant. It was no longer just about hidden glances and quiet moments. It was a storm gaining momentum, and we were standing right in its center. I kept asking myself if this was the point of no return. Were we too far gone to stop, or was there still a chance to step back before the truth came crashing down? I didn't have the answer then, but deep down I knew the story was rushing toward a breaking point, and whatever came next would change everything forever. The turning point came faster than I expected. The tension in the house had been building all week while my mother was away, and by the time she returned, it felt like the walls themselves were carrying our secret. I thought we could slip back into normal life, pretend nothing had happened, but the truth has a way of surfacing when you least expect it. It all unraveled one evening during dinner. My old friend had texted me again, asking to meet up, and without thinking, I smiled at my phone. My mother noticed immediately and asked who it was. Before I could answer, my stepdad shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening in a way only I recognized. It was subtle, but to me, it said everything. My heart pounded as I mumbled an excuse, but I knew I wasn't convincing anyone. My mother didn't press further, but I could feel her eyes on both of us the rest of the night. Later that evening, as I was clearing the dishes, she came into the kitchen and asked a question that froze me in place. "Is there something you're not telling me?" Her voice was calm, but her eyes searched mine as if she already knew the answer. My stepdad walked in just then, and for a moment, the three of us stood there in silence, the weight of months of secrecy pressing down. That was the climax. The moment when lies and truth collided. I wanted to confess, to end the unbearable weight, but before I could, he stepped forward and spoke. His words weren't what I expected. He didn't admit anything outright. Instead, he redirected the conversation, telling my mother I had been stressed, caught between an old friend trying to pull me back into something and my own need to focus on the future. His explanation was smooth, almost believable, but I knew it wasn't the whole truth. My mother looked uncertain, torn between doubt and trust, but she let it go for the moment. The twist came the next day. I found a note tucked into one of my books, written in my mother's handwriting. It was short, but it sent chills down my spine. "I see more than you think. Be careful what you choose." That single line changed everything. She hadn't believed his words completely. She knew, at least partly, that something was wrong. And now, the secret wasn't just between him and me, it was something my mother was quietly watching, waiting to see unfold. The conflict seemed resolved on the surface, but the truth was it had only shifted. The roles had changed. The game had become more dangerous, and nothing would ever be simple again. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about my mother's note. It was haunting in its simplicity, but heavy with meaning. She hadn't accused me outright, she hadn't exposed us, but she had let me know she wasn't blind. The silence that followed in the house was almost unbearable. Meals were quieter, conversations shorter, and every look she gave me felt like it carried an unspoken question. What choice are you going to make? That was when I realized the truth. This wasn't just about desire or secrecy, or even the connection I thought I had with my stepdad. This was about the family I was risking, the trust that could shatter in an instant if I let things go further. My old friend kept reaching out, and for the first time, I actually considered saying yes. Not because I was in love with him, but because he represented a chance at something normal, something without secrets. One evening, when my mother had gone to bed, my stepdad tried to talk to me. He told me that things couldn't continue the way they were, that the risk was too high. His words should have been a relief, but instead they cut deep. Part of me wanted him to fight for what we had, to admit that it was more than just a passing connection. But he didn't. He chose caution. And maybe, in the end, that was the only choice either of us could make. I didn't argue. I just nodded, even though my chest ached with a mix of disappointment and strange relief. From that night on, we both knew the line we had crossed could never be crossed again. The moments of silence, the glances, the closeness, they all faded, replaced by careful distance. It was painful, but it was also necessary. As weeks turned into months, the intensity faded, but the memory never disappeared. My mother never brought up the note again, but her quiet warning stayed with me. In her way, she had given me a choice: protect what mattered most, or lose it forever. I chose to protect it. Looking back, I know now that temptation can appear in the most unexpected places, even within the walls we think are safe. And sometimes, the most powerful stories aren't about what happened, but about what almost happened, the choices we make in silence that shape who we become. So here's where our story ends. The line we crossed changed me forever, but so did the decision to step back. Maybe that's the real lesson. Desire can shake our world, but it's the choices afterward that define us. What do you think? Was stepping back the right decision, or should I have followed my heart no matter the cost? Comment your thoughts below, and let me know if you'd want to see a sequel exploring what might have happened if the story had gone differently. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want more stories like this. Summary: this story follows a young woman caught in a dangerous connection with her stepdad while her mother slept, a secret that spirals into jealousy, tension, and close calls. Just when it seems everything might unravel, her mother leaves a note revealing she knows more than she lets on. In the end, the main character is forced to choose between protecting her family and giving in to forbidden desire, leaving behind a powerful lesson about choices, temptation, and consequences. E7.